So changes and trends because of cyber incidences. I think there's been a lot of changes. I think that it's cliche to say that everything's becoming more complex, but I feel there's a couple of key things. So I actually saw at the coffee machine today, there was a thing saying, what are the two CISO's biggest risks? And one were people inside the organisation, one were people outside the organisation. I mean, I personally think that that culture needs to change because the nature of how these attacks are happening and the advancements in how attackers are actually able to do that and the normal behaviour that we're expecting of users post-COVID makes it really difficult, and we've got to stop blaming victims. So I think one of the changes is to start to say this sort of thing will happen and we've got to prepare for it. No longer do we try to blame victims for it, no longer do we try and stop everything from happening. People have accepted that if we want to be resilient, we've got to make sure that we're ready for it and we respond quickly for it and we know what to do in that space. So I think the way that these trends are influencing the projects is that ultimately people are trying to escalate forward some of that resilience stack that they may have been relying on other things for before. So to explain that, if we were doing phishing simulation before and we thought that that was going to stop people doing a certain thing, the way that people are trying to take credentials now and often having to authenticate for OneDrive sort of files anyway, I think we're starting to build that resilience in no matter what. So we're trying to make sure that we know when that stuff happens, that we can contain that stuff, that we can actually get in front of it and respond immediately, and that we can put rules in place so that as soon as something happens, we're automating the protection of the organisation, expecting the worst to happen and making sure that we're resilient afterwards. So those projects, things like zero trust strategies, things like consolidation and being able to understand risk in a quantifiable way, those projects are getting a massive priority now. Yeah, simply we want to give government confidence. We want to turn around and say, we want the agencies to be able to say we've taken a realistic snapshot of what we've got. We've understood the agency's desire for risk, the appetite for risk, and we've made a risk-based decision so that we can have confidence to do what we need to do and know that we've taken all the right steps and we've got everything in place to be able to move forward to the best that we can, realistically. Collaboration is really important, not just across New South Wales, but across, globally and across Australia as well. I think there's been an area where people don't really want to talk about their failures because they feel like it's going to expose them or it's going to embarrass them. I think that's starting to change, but I think that culture needs to change as well, where people actually say, this is a lesson that we learned. This particular thing happened, therefore we went out and made these steps to be able to remediate that so that the other person doesn't have to learn the hard way. I was speaking to Tony Chapman earlier, and they had a summit where government was able to come together confidentially and share some of those experiences. I think that sort of sharing is really important to be able to not repeat the same mistakes.